Hello and welcome to this new edition of Editorial Talk. My name is Chiara Valentini and I'm a professor of corporate communication at the University of Ascoli. I am also one of the executive director of UPRERA. For those of you who join us for the first time, let me first introduce our association. UPRERA is a European Public Relation Education and Research Association. We have currently more than 500 members in over 50 countries. And our members are a mix of academics and professional. They are based in Europe, but also in other parts of the world. UPRERA Association is really an association that fosters a community passionate of scholars and professionals and researchers and educators that are keen in studies and working in public relations and strategic communication. And we do a lot of different activities, including having thematic networks, projects. We have an annual congress. Next year congress will take place in Malaga, Spain, during the 16th to the 18th of September 2026. The topic of next year conference is Regenerating Public Relations Strategic Communication in the Faces of New Global Order. Are we ready for this challenge? And you can find more information about the conference and of course all the activity UPRERA also in our UPRERA website, in our social media channels. Now, another activity that our association is very keen is promoting and increasing opportunity to learn and share knowledge among our next generations of scholars and professionals. And we do this with different initiatives, including this one that you are attending today, which is organized by our UNES network, which is our network of young and mid-career scholars. So today's webinar, Behind the Editorial Desk, Publishing and Interdisciplinary Research for Emerging Scholar, is moderated by Denis Sibunovic, who will join shortly this network. Denis will tell you more about the topic and of course the speakers. I wish you all a pleasant and nice webinar. Let's stay in touch and look at also our webinar series that are published in the UPRERA YouTube channels.
Thank you very much, Chiara, for your introduction, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to this UPRERA Talks today. I'm Denis Simonovic, and I'm Academic Associate at the University of Zurich and Research Fellow at University Ulm, Milano. And I'm the UNES co-leader together with Caroline Siegel from Leipzig University. But before we begin, let me first introduce what UNES is. UNES is a European Network of Emerging Scholars, which is the promoter of today's webinar. UNES is a European network dedicated for early and mid-career working people in public relations and strategic communication. Our goal is to support researchers in their career development, provide spaces for peer learning and also for international connection. We do this through a lot of activities, conference-based activities during our UPRERA conference. We do our weekly Manuscript Madness Monday, where we meet together, we write together, we organize research escalator, we organize webinars, we organize reading groups dedicated to theory, methods, and way more. UNES was founded in May 2022 by Hui Zhao and by Alexander Buhmann. The idea was to actually grow a community that is informally discussing and that is informally within the UPRERA space, creating actually a space for the community to foster and to grow, and also to leave the space for the public relation scholarship to actually grow within. It's within this spirit that we organized today webinar together with Professor Yijing Wang. And it's with the spirit that we also want to respond to one of the main questions that is coming from our members, from our early and mid-career members, which is to actually how to publish successfully interdisciplinary research. Indeed, this interdisciplinary work is often where the most innovative ideas emerge, but it's also fine to position within our own journal and to meet expectation from journal editors. Therefore, today with Yijing, we will tackle a lot of topics like what editors will look from interdisciplinary work, how to position your contribution, what might be the common pitfalls of publishing interdisciplinary research, and as well as how to choose the right journal for your research fit. We truly honored to welcome Professor Yijing Wang. Professor Yijing Wang is Professor and Chair of Strategic Communication at Erasmus University Rotterdam. She's also the Chair of the CREA Risk and Crisis Communication Session and Principal Investigator of different European-funded projects. And crucially for today's webinar, she's also Editor-in-Chief of Corporate Reputation Review and serves on the editorial board of several really important journals for our community, such as Public Relation Review and Business Horizons, therefore providing a truly interdisciplinary perspective on how we can tackle this question. So, Yijing, thank you very much for being with us. We are thrilled to have you here, and I will hand over the floor to you right now.
Thanks a lot, Dennis, for the great introduction. Also, thank you to Chiara for the opening of this webinar. I think for me, it's a great honor to join this webinar and to share my experience as the editor-in-chief of the Corporate Reputation Review. But as you know, in academic world, there's quite a diversity, so I'm not representing the typical stereotype of editor-in-chief. But I do have some experience to share based on my work for the journal and also for some other guest editing for special issues that I would like to share with the audience and emerging scholars here. So maybe we can start with the slides, if Kate can help with that. Thanks a lot. So maybe I can start a bit with my own journey, why we would like to focus on interdisciplinary research and how can we get our work published on this topic. So now I'm in the Department of Media and Communication at Erasmus University Rotterdam. But when I did my PhD, it was at the management school of our university. And my research was very much on corporate social responsibility. But back then, it was only the emerging time that this topic started to get into the mainstream of management studies. So I came with the management background, but then gradually grow into the field of communication science. And what fascinated me during my PhD time was that if we really want to understand how CSR is kind of affecting organizations and individuals, we should not only put the focus on the organizational structure, the resources within different organizations, but also in terms of how the message should be framed in such a way that can evoke emotions and to engage stakeholders. So that is already a kind of point where management and communication research meets each other. So for me, I see that as a very natural transition. But what I also observe in the field is that marketing, management, communication are getting closer and closer. We see a lot of PR studies published in management or marketing journals, and also the other way around. So then back to the question, why do we consider interdisciplinary research? I would say from my perspective is first of all fun. To explore a study and to see how different angles can be mingled and combined in a meaningful way. But in the meantime, it also enables comprehensive understanding of complex phenomena. If we think about the contemporary society with all the polarized issues and the major societal challenges, this is probably one of the approach that can help tackle these grand issues or societal problems. What we also see is that now organizations and education institutions are facing more intense challenges for grant applications. And some of the grants at the European level put a clear emphasis on interdisciplinary or even transdisciplinary research. So that also opens doors to many grant opportunities to collaborate with great researchers. It also allows scholars to build new theoretical frameworks. So when we try to find a nuance of the research from the interdisciplinary perspective, you might see some, let's say, drawbacks or something missing or gaps in the literature that you can create new stories that can fit the interest of 2 or even more fields there. So I also see the avenues that can be opened by combining insights from different fields. And the third point on the slide is that it can also offer solutions for real-world challenges that across sector boundaries. So when we try to look into the societal issues, we not only want to contribute to academic literature, but also to come up with real-world relevant implications. So this is also the way that we can see how interdisciplinary research can contribute. But of course, more than this, no matter at which level of our career, it's always important to work with great people, right? So why interdisciplinary research is not only the opportunity to collaborate with people in our field, but also we can get really eye-opened or inspired by other theories and other methodological approach or other ways to tackle the same issue. So for me, I think that's also fascinating that you can get the opportunity to work with many other scholars from various fields. So here I can also share a bit about my experience leading a Horizon Europe project, CUES, so consumers' understanding of eating sustainably. We have over 20 partners combining societal partners and academic scholars that allowed us to really tackle the societal challenges, so sustainable food consumption from communication, marketing, management, and many other angles, and to form meaningful research for making real impact. So I think that is a fun part. If you are open to work with people in other fields, then this could be something to consider. So what actually makes interdisciplinary research publishable? Well, we can start with anything new and interesting, but it may not always translate into something as academic publication, right? So it can be a very, long or challenging pathway, but there are some things we could consider in this process to better facilitate the interdisciplinary research ending up in a good journal. So I asked 2 key questions here. The first one is, what gap can only be solved through an interdisciplinary lens? When we start to consider a research problem, we probably want to understand and also justify why the problem should not be studied by just a single disciplinary. Why do we need to bring in the insights from other disciplines, and what complementary, contributions these joint disciplinaries can actually add to the research? So if we want to tackle a gap, this could be the starting point. First, to find a meaningful angle to contribute by combining different literature. And the second question here is that how can we make the so what obvious for both scholars and the practitioners? So what not only in terms of how we can contribute to the academic literature, but also so what in terms of what societal challenges we are trying to address here and what practical implications that our research can offer after the data collection, analysis, and the discussion of our results. So these 2 things, both the gaps and the so what, need to become evident throughout the manuscript, that when we prepare it, we really try to explain the motivation of the research and also the impact of the research. So you can think about the gap is more relating to the motivation, and the so what is more relating to the impact. Moving on, then there are some tips. I hope that they could be helpful. So the first thing here is that relating to explaining the gaps, it's important to emphasize on conceptual boundaries. So, for each discipline, scholars have a clear preference about certain terminologies and theories that should be adopted to address phenomena or research questions. So here we need to show a very good understanding that even though we are considering the interdisciplinary perspective, we actually know what is happening for the separate disciplines and why they should be merged together. So the conceptual boundaries should be explained very clearly in the theoretical framework in the paper, probably also very briefly already in the introduction section of each paper. Second point here is about integrating two or more theories in a meaningful way. So I already mentioned that in previous slides. What do we mean by a meaningful way? So meaningful way is not that we just repeatedly saying that this makes sense, but we could provide evidence. For example, some gaps can be addressed by combining these insights. That's one way to show why it is meaningful. It could also be a way to show a new framework that can cover different streams of research, but in a structured or systemic approach. So that could be another way to show why it is meaningful to use this interdisciplinary lens. But we do need to find an angle that is really adding clear value there. So the meaningful way also shows that the narrative of the theoretical framework needs to have a very clear logic that the audience can follow easily. And also show some mechanism, like how do perspectives complement each other. This is embedded more or less in the narrative of the theoretical framework. And then to explain the adding value of your research. So what does the interdisciplinary approach uncover that a single discipline research does not? So these are maybe the key points that we could provide already a short answer at the first place before starting to draft the complete manuscript. And then you can embed these points in the writing later on. All right, then maybe a bit more words about different journals in our field. I'm sure that you're all familiar with several key journals. Dennis already mentioned about the Corporate Reputation Review. And we also have, scholar Professor Jasper, who is the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Communication Management. We also have the Corporate Communication and International Journal and the Journal of Contingency and Crisis Management, which had a very clear focus on risk and crisis communication. And there is probably no need to mention also the Public Relations Review, which is a leading journal in our field. When we start to think about what journal could be our targeting outlet, the first thing I would consider is whether my study has a very clear fit or alignment with the journal's scope and audience. So probably that will need a bit desk research about which journal has a better fit than others. On this slide, you can see that I only showed the comparison of 4 journals, but you can also make a similar comparison for the journals that you might consider for submitting your work. So here for the Corporate Reputation Review, or we call it CRR, we focus on reputation management, trust, corporate social responsibility, stakeholder perceptions, but of course, more broadly about the role of management and business in societal issues. And this journal was established by the promoter of my PhD, Professor Kees van Riel. And later on, the editor-in-chief was Dr. Guido Barons. So I'm like the 3rd generation, working on the editing for this journal. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out by email or just let me know before you want to submit to this journal so I can give you a check whether it's a fit or not. And this journal has been using this interdisciplinary lens since the beginning because it was originally embedded in the management school, and we consider submissions from psychology, management, communication, sociology. So it's very, very broad. Then move on to the next one, Journal of Communication Management. The focus has a very clear emphasis on strategic communication, corporate communication. So probably you need to show that how your study is close to corporate practices, right? How you can really make either bigger or major or minor changes in the communication field. And also for this journal, my experience is that we often see guest specials, and special issues guest edited by the journal. So you could keep eyes open about what is out there. Then Journal of Contagions in Crisis Management. The editor-in-chief is Dr. Timothy Combs. And he's more or less, most people know him if you work in risk and crisis communication. And he handles also the submission rather timely. And Corporate Communication International Journal, I also had a very positive experience submitting my own work there. So I think it's really thanking to the very dedicated editorial team behind the desk. So not only for our team, but also for other scholars contributing to the publishing of our work. And then move on to the network. So when you start to consider journal, that's usually a later phase. You already have some solid progress on your research, and you already start to see which outlet could be a fit for the submission. But before that, there are many other things that you could already consider or do before submitting your paper. So here I would just emphasize you can have a check of the international networks, which sections best fit your research interest, which audience is most suitable to review your work, and also which groups would you like to collaborate with. Because it can happen very regularly that when you present your work at a conference or when you discuss with scholars during the conference, they could also be the reviewers of your research. You never know, right? I mean, it's a blinded review, but you may talk to people who get to know your research before the time you submit it to the journal. So if you get a chance to explain or address their questions during the conference presentation, it may already leave a very good impression, or they may already feel connected with the work you've been doing. So for myself, I usually consider 3 international or European networks. ICA, I think many people already know, and the coming year it will be in Cape Town in South Africa. Yeah, I hope some of you will join that. I'm not going myself, but I do plan to go for the other 2 on the slides. So IPRERA conference that will be in Malaga, Chiara already mentioned that, and also the ICREA conference that will be in Brno, Czech Republic. So for the ICREA conference, I'm chairing the section Risk and Crisis Communication. We have around 350 members in the section, and usually around 100 and plus will join the ICREA conference. By the way, in 2027, I will also organize the conference, the section conference Crisis 9 in Rotterdam at Erasmus University. So if you are interested, you could already mark it in your calendar. It will be in October 2027. So looking forward to seeing many of you in different occasions before seeing the paper submitting to a journal. So that is about the network. And then I want to give you one example about how this interdisciplinary research or angle could be considered. This is a special issue that Professor Daniel Lafford and myself guest edited for the Public Relations Review. We did already some research on the spillover effect of crisis. So it's very much relating to crisis communication, crisis management. And then we thought maybe this is a good moment to organize a special issue. So we discussed with the editor-in-chief of the journal back then. It was Maureen Taylor, and she was very much in support of this idea. And we also we were very explicit that for the special issue, we want to make it as open as possible and to consider interdisciplinary research. So eventually we accepted 10 submissions out of 21, and the submitted papers include studies from communication, marketing, management, and also from psychology research. So you can see that even for a special issue, there could be studies from different fields adding value to a key or core topic in the field. So always keep eyes open about possible avenues, including special issues. And you can actually send an email to the guest editors just to check whether this could be a fit or not. You can submit the abstract to discuss about it. Okay, and move on to the corporate reputation review. Just a very quick recap about the journal. So I'm not the only one working on the handling of the submissions. I also have two great colleagues who are offering their support during the process. So Dr. Sergu Nyong and Dr. Hui Zhao. So one is my colleague at Erasmus University, and Hui Zhao is assistant professor at Aarhus University. I believe they are also in the audience of today's webinar. So thanks a lot. So I can tell a bit about the process. When we receive a submission, what I will do is that I will first screen the paper to see whether the scope has a good fit with our journal. And if it's not, then the authors will receive a desk rejection. If the fit is there and the paper also has a good quality in terms of writing, in terms of the scope of the research, then I will either handle the submission myself or I will dedicate it to either Sergu or Hui. So they have their own expertise in the field. So I will try to find the studies which fit their interest and their expertise. So then they can start to review the paper or find reviewers to handle the paper. In the meantime, I also handle most other submissions. So the regular turnover rate is around 2 to 3 months. But there could be period like close to the holiday, the submission may take a bit more time to pass the desk screen. But we are open to submissions throughout the year. And for each issue, we accept around 4 to 5 submissions. So that is the overall, kind of organization of this journal. And we also welcome special issue calls. So this year we had 2 special issues. One has been finalized and one was just out on, I think it's relating to nonprofit organizations, how their communication and management could fit the purpose of organizations in the current business context. So if you have any interest of organizing your own special issue, also feel free to reach out to our editorial team, and we will consider how that is aligned with the interests of the journal, and then we can support you to kick off the process of the special issue. So I would say never hesitate to reach out if you have any interest about guest editing special issue or any questions about your submissions. And now and then, what you may also observe is that for some journals, the editorial team also writes reflection on the journal's past and how to move forward. This year, Sergu, Hui, and myself, we wrote this editorial piece because last year we had the transition from the former editor-in-chief, Dr. Hiro Behrens, to the current editorial team. So we interviewed Hiro to get his insights about working for this journal for the last 8 years. How did he reflect on his role and what trends did he observe during the time he worked? And what did he consider as the key, topics and avenues to move forward with the field and also with the journal? So if you are interested in what kind of submissions might be more interesting to the journal, you can take a look at this editorial piece in which Hiro also shared a lot of interesting insights about how we decide which work fits better than others and why we would like to consider interdisciplinary research to broaden the scope of reputation management. So you can find also similar type of editorial pieces for other journals. Okay. I already mentioned briefly about the editor's decision process. Here is just to give you a bit more overview about the key steps in the process. So what kind of submissions are likely to get a desk rejection? It could be a misalignment with journal scope. It can be a lack of theoretical contribution. This actually happened quite commonly, I must say, because we received a large number of empirical research that they had some data collected, they analyzed the data, and then they mainly build their research on the replication of a previous study. Then the question here is that how many new insights or how much it can actually contribute to the field from a theoretical perspective. It's probably a question mark there. And then if we receive a large number of submissions, we will become even more careful about the studies that only focused on the empirical contributions, but not the theoretical ones. I must say that one trend I noticed in last year compared to previous years is that now we get so many more submissions. I don't know whether it had anything to do with the ChatGPT or in general the use of AI, which speeded up the process, but the submission is more or less 3 times higher than what we had in the past. So we become more critical about the submissions. But in the meantime, we are also discussing with the managing editor of the journal and the publisher how we can handle this more sensibly. I think one implementation or one change in the submission system is that now there is a plagiarism check that from the editor's perspective, we can actually see how many parts of the paper correspond to previous work, but also whether there is a question or suspicion of AI use in the writing. And the next point is about the insufficient methodological rigor. So if we find that either the sample size is too small or the explanation of the steps in the data collection and the data processing misses some good insights there, then that could be also a reason the paper got rejected. Writing and poor framing, I think that is less and less common in the submissions that we observed, probably because, there are many different ways that you can polish your work. But if the paper has too many grammar mistakes or the coherence is not always there, you can imagine it will be difficult to pass the desk review phase. And sometimes we also receive studies that are not really academic enough. I know for some journals, they are open to both scholarly work and works that are more like a business case or educational case studies. Unfortunately, this is not the case for the corporate reputation review. So we only focus on scholar work in academic context. So you can consider other outlets if you feel your work is more close to the practitioners, then I think you need to know which journal is open to that audience, but it's not for the corporate reputation review. Okay, so almost the final slide about how to increase publication success rates. I must say that this is probably $1 million question. I don't really have answer. If you do this and that, you will definitely get your paper published. But there are some things that I learned through my own journey and also through serving as the editor-in-chief of the journal. One first point here is to ensure that your submission is a very well-polished version. So you need to do this magic touch to make sure that it's readable, and it's not just readable, but also it reads enlightening. So there are some clear value and also for the reviewers, entertaining facts, not entertaining in the real world, but for academics, something fun to read there. So that means the abstract is rather strong and the contribution statements are clear in the introduction. Or for some journals like a public relations review, they request you to provide a list of highlights in which you can also specify your key contributions. So the statement needs to be there. And also use professional tables and figures. Sometimes the reviewers look at the figures and tables even before jumping into the text of the paper. So try to make it as professional as possible, but also it needs to be aligned with the referencing style requested by the journal. By the way, for corporate reputation review, we don't have a specific requirement for the citation for the first submission, we are open to that. So it gives you a bit more adaptability. If you submit it to a even better journal, it didn't work out, you can submit it to the corporate reputation review. But for some journals, you need to really carefully read the author's submission guidelines to make sure that the length of the paper meets the requirement. And there are many other specific requirements that you should follow. And the second point here is about emphasizing the societal challenges, or what kind of real-world problems that you can try to resolve through your research. So for the corporate reputation review, we are very much interested in anything affecting corporate reputation, so reputation damage during a crisis, or how to regain reputation after major negative issues of the organization. Misinformation, disinformation, in particular relating to the hype of AI, polarization, climate risks, and AI ethics. So these are the key societal issues, but I'm sure that you can think of many others, right, that would be relevant to your research. And also about the engagement of the issue. Yeah, I mentioned already earlier about the special issues that you need to keep eyes open about what's possible and what fits best with your research. Maybe one more thing I want to share before I close my part is that, I think as a scholar, publishing is fun. It's very, it's something kind of motivating me to keep on writing. But it may not be always the case that you feel it's a strong manuscript, then it will end up in the top journal in the field. There are many other elements that could play a role here. But I would say that trying to stay committed to doing your best is what shapes you as a scholar. So no matter how things change in your field or how the higher education institutions are adapting to the new challenges, to the budget cut, at least you need to focus on doing what you find most meaningful to you. So for me, essentially, it's about working with great people and also working on a new research topic that is close to my heart and close to my expertise. It's already quite fulfilling itself. So I hope you also share that joy along this journey. All right, maybe I could stop here and then we can close the slides and move on to the Q&A part. So I hand it over to you, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yijing. I think your presentation was very insightful. You touch a lot of important topics for our community. You also presented really important journals that we basically deal every day. And I would like to start as a first question is, you of course mentioned that interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary work is really important also to solve organizational challenges, societal challenges. And I truly believe that it's by engaging and putting together different disciplines is that you can really come out with innovative ideas. One way I do that is by reading widely. Perhaps I think it is really important for our community to read not only within our subfield. So you presented, of course, some of the most important journals, but I truly believe that it's important to read widely within communication theory, with communication study, perhaps with organization theory and sociology. So this is how I approach that. My question for you is, how do you actually enact your background, how you professionally work with interdisciplinary, your own scholarship? And on top of that, I will also ask a question about, we always talk about borrowing from other disciplines. So Stratcom is borrowing from sociology, organization theory, psychology. But did you had any chances of within your work to actually give something to a colleague from the other disciplines? So it's the case that Stratcom actually might be a source of inspiration for other disciplines to grow themselves.
Yes, thanks a lot, Dennis. These are very good points to think about. I can tell a bit about how I approach it. Maybe two things here I want to mention. One is that sometimes the collaboration or the interdisciplinary research started with small talks. I very much appreciate these small talks with colleagues and also through this online format that we explain about our interest in a specific topic, and other colleagues also share their insights, and somehow we start to converge and reach a point that we feel, okay, we can both contribute to it. This happened a lot, not only at conferences. So by the way, talking about conferences, it's not only about following the presentations, it's also about the social part. Next to the presentations or sessions, that these small talks can actually happen and result in really inspirational ideas. That's one thing. And the second thing, I feel being critical at the first place when you try to combine theories from different fields is very essential. Being critical meaning that, for example, I come from the management background. I know resource-based views, they hold a theory by heart. But then when I talk to someone from psychology and bringing in the research of reactance, trying to explain why people become more resistant to certain type of communication framing than others, then we need to see how that can actually make a meaningful contribution together. So I welcome open discussion and also questions regarding the theories that I know. It could be there are some blind points or blind spots that I don't see since I've been in this field for many years, but it could be the same case for other scholars. So I think this critical reflection at the first place to understand which theories actually are more relevant and meaningful to be put into the research context than others, this would be already a good, solid starting point. So I would always hesitate until we really share the understanding of the theories that should be brought into the theoretical framework of the study. So this critical mindset, I think all scholars embrace that as part of our academic journey, but that's even more essential when we start to talk about a collaboration for interdisciplinary research.
Yes, thank you very much. I think you provided a really clear example of how you, coming from a more economic management background, are actually confronting the same problem, but from different actually angles with people who might, because often that's the case. You see the same problem, but from different perspective.
Absolutely.
We need to move to some other audience question when we gather before our webinar is from a member who was asking, I need to know how to marry the theory and the findings of my study. Any insight on that?
Well, that's a very relevant question. For most of the manuscripts, we need to have a discussion section, right? Sometimes the journal are also very critical about what you put in the discussion section. It could be discussion or discussion and conclusion, either separately or in one part. But in any case, the discussion section needs to have something relating to the theoretical implications. And that is the part that you try to reflect on the theories that you reviewed in the theoretical framework and to make a synthesis about your findings and previous literature and see how you can add value there. So when I mentioned the key statements of your contribution, it's not only about the scientific relevance that you emphasize in the introduction section, but also about in the discussion section, what key points that you can highlight as the contributions of the study. And here it's not just about plain stating these are our key findings, but also be explicit about how that helps move one step further to strengthen the theoretical framework in one or even more field. So this is already a very technical tip, but consider and reconsider what you want to put in your discussion section, because very often I saw reviewers requested the extension of the discussion section to give a bit more nuance about the contribution from a theoretical perspective. So before the reviewers point that out, probably it will be helpful if it's already mentioned in the manuscript.
Excellent, thank you. We have a question that is really touching a relevant issue, perhaps you as an editor, and it's about Gen AI. What will be considered an appropriate use of Gen AI when writing an article? For example, we can range from brainstorming about which word to use to producing the entire section of the article. What's your take?
Yeah, my first reaction would be it's painful for an editor to to get into the review process when there is AI involved in it. It's also a kind of debate, strong debate in the publishing field now. What is possible? What is allowed? What is legitimate? I would say we don't really have a unified answer yet. And for different publisher and different journals, there are separate criteria there. We, as the editors of the publisher, of the corporate reputation reviews publisher, also received an email from the publisher saying that you need to be careful about handling the submissions because several journals received so many submissions clearly AI created. So that is the extreme case. It's not only about point and brainstorming ideas or polishing the text. The whole manuscript was written by AI. So some journals have the tools to identify that. They already filter those submissions, so they don't end up in the hands of the editor. But maybe other journals don't have that. This is the first step that still requires adaptation and improvement in the whole publishing sector, I would say, that how we can better filter out and identify journals with clear AI use in there. And the second thing relating to this point is that then when we submit a paper, how and to what extent can we use AI? I know for some fields, scholars already use AI to co-pilot, meaning that if they need to do some coding, like using R package, it could be that ChatGPT actually wrote the script rather than they type in text by text for coding some content for online content analysis. That is, quite common and also acceptable by journals. And for our journal, we don't see that high tech level submissions yet. It's more about the writing part that AI is used to polish the language. Yeah, from an editor's perspective, I would say it's very hard to tell if it's AI use or if it's not AI use. I think the integration of AI until today is already reaching the point that we couldn't really see if it's a real scholar behind the manuscript or it's a real scholar plus the AI use behind the manuscript. So I think it's still, it generates more questions than answers, to the publishing field. And I don't really have any solutions here myself. But I think as a scholar, one thing we appreciate very much is that we like our personal individual intelligence, right? So whenever we give the ownership to the AI, no matter it's about generating the ideas or about making the first draft of the manuscript, for me, I would feel I'm surrendering my ownership to something that I don't see that value adding to my work. So this is probably our personal ethics and our personal standards, but that's another debate within our field. What will be our collective standards that we all want to comply with or follow, and whether it's meaningful and should also evolve across time. So I'm very glad that someone asked this question that we can discuss further. I'm happy to have an open dialogue about that.
Yeah, and thank you, Huang Gang from Erasmus University, to asking the question. Actually, I guess that the implication of this question goes way far beyond our own discipline, but it's rather the heart of academia itself, I would guess. Moving to the next question from Michael Johan, is the case of interdisciplinary work. Are reviewers usually from different discipline? If so, do you have any recommendation on how to convince reviewers with different disciplinary backgrounds to come together? What's your experience within this?
Yeah, I think one common understanding now is that it's getting more and more challenging to find committed reviewers. For academics, our work consists of several parts. We do research, we do teaching, we also do a lot of voluntary work, like reviewing for different journals or doing the editorship. This is part of the community support that we all contribute and also we benefit from it. But since the time is getting more intense and our job is getting more challenging, what I personally experience is that when I send out invite for review, it may not always get a positive response. And I'm sure that that is also shared by our associate editors of the journal. Our initial, let's say, plan is indeed to find the reviewers who have a perfect fit or really close to the topic of the study. But if we send out the invite 2 or 3 rounds, we still couldn't find a reviewer, then we might consider other possibilities, scholars who are not directly in the field but might be interested in the topic. So that could be a different backup plan. But we also consider reviewers who may like to submit to the same journal. So they want to get a bit sense about how this journal publish articles and research under the same topic and whether they should use the same style to write and submit. So this consists of a large pool of potential reviewers for the field. But back to the question, the answer is yes. We do start with reviewers who are really close to the submissions topic. And then we hope to get a yes and a commitment from them. And if not, then we reach out to others who are more, who are close, but not exactly in the field. But I think for the corporate reputation review, at least for now, we mainly use reviewers who are already very experienced with the review process. So if we have any emerging scholars who also want to contribute it to this community and to get some experience about reviewing for a journal in the field, I also welcome them to join us. And after you deliver several reviews, and then we can consider whether we can extend our editorial board to welcome more board members. But that will require at least a commitment of the review for 1 or 2 years. Then we could see, you also join our community. That will be part of the process.
Thank you very much. I'll maybe last 2 questions. One is about actually the strategic value of special issues for interdisciplinary research. Can you walk us a little bit through how actually special issue, in the case of the journals you have experience with, they came to life, how teams are selected, how guest editors are chosen, and especially for our emerging scholars, how can they actually approach the expectation of editors in suggesting a special issue?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also a very good question. Maybe this is also related to a fundamental question that we may ask ourselves. Being a scholar, what we want to be recognized as an expert. So I'm positioning myself as an expert of sustainability communication, crisis communication, and what do you consider yourself as known as an expert? And why I'm asking this, because this is very much related to the special issue, no matter for guest editing or for the submissions. How it works is usually when people in a field see there is a new emerging concept or an emerging subtopic, they want to any interest and need in the field to make this concept or the development into the next level, then the special issue could be a very good opportunity for facilitating such interest. To give you one concrete example, about 2 years earlier, I developed the corporate readiness, crisis readiness concept with Timothy Combs and Yan Jing and several other scholars. It was an emerging concept in the field, but we found there are already many interests across scholars. So then we decided to organize a special issue, welcoming submissions and studies on this topic. So it turned out there are so many manuscripts submitted to the special issue. So this is very much related to, if you want to be known for a topic, you don't need to wait for the guest editors or journals to come to you. You can actually propose a special issue to a journal. And for that, you need to write either a one-pager or two-pager, and some journal also have a very clear format, what information should be submitted for a special issue call. So you can consider that. And for the guest editing, it's not always only for the senior or established scholars. It could also be, I see it very often, that emerging scholars, they also form their own editorial team and then guest edit a special issue for a journal. That can also happen. And the second part about why you would submit to a special issue or why you will be invited to contribute to a special issue. So it can be different ways that the special issue will look for submissions. Sometimes guest editors would already reach out to scholars at the first place when they present the proposal to the journal. So they say, we have 5 scholars in the field who are already committed to submit an abstract and later on a manuscript to the special issue, which means that the guest editors would also invite scholars in this field to submit. So that's an opportunity for the scholars, but only if you are known as an expert in this field. So that is tying back to my first question, what do you want to be known for? So if you want to be known as a strategic crisis communication scholar, then there might be a good chance that when the guest editors are working on a special issue on this topic, they will reach out to you. Or if you are working on so many different topics and then they don't really merge into, let's say, one key field that you can identify with, that might be a little tricky. So back to the question, I think we all need to position ourselves in one field or subfield that this is our expertise, this is our strength. So then people will see, I should come to you no matter I invite you for guest editing, for contribution, or for submitting a new work. So I hope that provided some answers to the question.
Yes, absolutely. I think you replied quite extensively and quite well to our question. I guess the time is over right now. We have more questions, but I will suggest our audience to send actually those questions to Professor Wang via email or to me, and then we can absolutely follow up more about this conversation. I also want to thank you once more, Jing, for your availability and for being with us. On behalf of the working group, actually, I also need to thank the members of the working group. We first organized this with Esther Koning-Svangvik, but behind this, there's also Michael Johan, Caroline Siegel, Anna Bebe, Salina Arti. So on behalf of the UNES working group, we want to thank you very much. We will organize more webinar in the upcoming years, so stay tuned with our activities.
Thanks a lot, Dennis, and also thank the network for this great opportunity. I feel really honored to be invited for this talk, and I look forward to seeing many of you at conferences, in person, or other online occasions.
Thank you, and thank you, Prera, for hosting us.